Have you ever wondered why eggs are sold in cartons of 12? Or why every hamburger patty comes with that little napkin? Don't wipe your mouth with that, by the way. And while we're at it, who put all that air in your bag of Cool Ranch Doritos? Well, sit tight. There's no need to harass your local shelf stalker for answers any longer. Today on Weird History Food, we're taking a look at why food is packaged the way it is. But before we get started, be sure to subscribe to the Weird History Food channel and let us know in the comments below what other food packaging traditions you would like to hear about. Okay, let's tear the wrapper off this thing. There are very few products out there that you have to attack to open, but that's exactly what Pillsbury's patent for the original breakable tube called for. The Doughboy does love to be struck. In the 1950s, Pillsbury was looking for an efficient way to ship their dough across the nation. They got stuck on the idea of using tubular packaging, presumably because the shape allows a can of Pillsbury dough to be thrown with a perfect spiral, which is vital for that game-winning touchdown. And maybe they just wanted an excuse to say tubular. Officially, the design provided three distinct advantages. The tubes were airtight, stackable, and easy to ship. But it was nearly impossible to pry open the tube's metal lid, and getting the sticky dough out in one piece was a different, additional nightmare. So Pillsbury hired a team of innovators to make their tubes easier to open and to make the dough inside easier to reach. After a lot of wasted dough and several exploding tubes, these intrepid inventors came up with a solution. They cut the entire tube into a perforated spiral, not too perforated or the tube would burst during shipping, and instructed customers to bash the tube against a countertop at home. It was like mixing the ancient sport of bashing things with the art of making biscuits. The original patent called for the countertop mallet method, though more recent Pillsbury packages have told customers to gently press on their tubes with a spoon. Although, please note that opening the dough this way will result in a batch of Coward's biscuits. Regardless of how you choose to open your tube, though, you can be sure that doughy goodness awaits inside. Anyone who's ever left a beer out in the sun can tell you, something just ain't right about letting light hit your hops. But the sun doesn't just make beer warm, unsatisfying, and stinky. Exposure to light actually makes it undergo a chemical change, which is why it's so hard to get that Rolling Rock odor out of your beanbag chair. It rearranges the elemental structure of the beer, creating the compound 3-methyl-2-butane-1-thiol within your drink. Though this process is technically a photooxidation reaction, beer brewers across America have another name for it. They call it skunking. Skunking is the bane of any brewer that cares about the craft. Since its discovery in the 1960s, brewers the nation over have fought against it by bottling their beers in darkly tinted glass. Ever wonder why beer's mostly sold in brown bottles? It's to fight the good fight against funky suds. Even so, some legacy brewers still use clear or green bottles, even though they aren't as effective at preventing skunking. Hey, when it comes to marketing, sometimes quality must be sacrificed at the altar of tradition. And sometimes you need to make sure they actually put a lime wedge in your Corona. But don't think your beer is safe from skunking just because you went with a can instead of a bottle. Cans can undergo a skunking process all their own, known as thermal aging. Which sounds like what happened to Encino Man, but in this case is just a process that makes Natty Light taste worse. Unfortunately, there's no easy brown bottle solution for this form of skunking, and scientists today are still trying to figure out better ways to prevent it from happening. Supermarket meat is usually sold with an absorbent white liner beneath it, like a little diaper in case your beef has an accident on the way home. But why? Because the federal government says so, that's why. While this liner may help to keep meat juices from causing a cleanup on aisle 5, its function goes deeper than simply stopping meat from leaking its meaty fluids out into the world. If puddles of meat juice are allowed to grow and stagnate within their containers, they become a veritable pool party for bacteria looking to procreate. It's like a motel jacuzzi for bacteria. So basically, just a motel jacuzzi. Consequently, both the U.S. Department of Agriculture and the FDA oversee the manufacturing and inclusion of meat liners to ensure that these microbial partygoers never get the chance to mingle. One manufacturer claims that each pad can hold up to 40 grams of liquid, or almost half a Capri Sun's worth of meat juice. Statistically speaking, the worst flavor of Capri Sun. And any changes to the makeup of these pads requires a petition and approval from the FDA. While we don't recommend frying up and eating the meat pad that came with your ribeye steak, the materials it's made from are manufactured to be as safe for consumption as possible. They're made up of silica gel and cellulose wrapped inside of a perforated, non-toxic plastic, and they're designed to be entirely indigestible. So, if someone, and we're not pointing fingers here, were to accidentally eat a small portion of one of these pads, the human body would simply pass it without absorbing any of its plastics. Although, you'd still have chugged an entire bacteria jacuzzi. Have you ever noticed that milk and juice are often sold by the gallon or the half gallon, but soda is usually sold by the liter? How did the metric and imperial systems of measurement get drawn into the beverage wars? For that one, we can blame Pepsi. In the 1970s, Pepsi was being outcompeted on all fronts by Coca-Cola. People couldn't get enough of Coke's sugary sweetness and its iconic glass bottles, and Pepsi needed to develop a plan if they wanted to survive. And it would still be several years before they could call on Michael Jackson and Britney Spears for help. They decided to focus on quantity over quality, which meant costly glass bottles had to go the way of Crystal Pepsi. So, Pepsi partnered up with a chemical company to develop a new plastic bottle that could hold 10 times the liquid of Coke's glass bottle. But as a global company, their packaging needed to make sense to a global market. They couldn't sell their sodas by the gallon or the quart because those measurements wouldn't make sense to overseas markets using the metric system.
Today we're going to do the metric system. Metric. All right. What's 2 liters? Rocky. This is 2 liters.
So, Pepsi created the world's first ever 2-liter soda bottle, and it's been a standard measurement for bulk soda distribution ever since. When all you want is bacon, trying to open that vacuum-sealed packaging can enrage even the most docile among us. It's a task that's almost impossible to do without either chewing it open like a badger in a trap or playing a dangerous game of chicken with a kitchen knife. And once that package is open, there's no easy way to seal the bacon back up. Opening a package of bacon is frequently an all-or-nothing proposition, but some people aren't prepared to eat 12 ounces of fried pork in one sitting, which means some of it is sure to go to waste. The reason for bacon's infuriating vacuum-sealed packaging is actually pretty simple. According to the USDA, opened and uncooked bacon only lasts about a week in the fridge. Resealable packaging can't achieve the same level of freshness protection as a vacuum seal. So while bacon plopped in a simple reusable bag will be ready for the long kiss goodnight after just a few days, vacuum-sealed bacon will last you months. That increases its shelf life and its ability to be shipped to grocery stores far and wide. Because of this, and despite calls from bacon lovers across the nation for resealable packaging, it's unlikely that there will be a movement towards resealable bacon anytime soon. In the meantime, bold bacon enthusiasts can always save up their pennies for an at-home vacuum sealer. That way, they can re-vacuum seal their leftover uncooked bacon and throw it in the freezer, making the resealed meat last a whole 6 months longer. Because the only thing that tastes better than bacon is future bacon. In America, eggs are most commonly sold by the dozen, because you don't always hit the car you're aiming at with the first few throws. If 12 seems like an arbitrary number to you, that's because it comes from America's British past. For hundreds of years, and ending in the 1960s and 70s, the British used the shilling as a staple form of currency. Each shilling was the equivalent of 12 pence, the lowest unit of measurement in the British monetary system. Eggs were in high supply and went bad quickly, and one egg would often cost just 1 penny. And when it came to selling eggs in bulk, farmers would group them together by the dozen for simplicity's sake. 12 eggs could be sold for 12 pence, which was exactly the same as selling them for 1 shilling. That way, farmers could sell their eggs in bulk without having to dole out change. Early American colonizers brought with them both the British system of currency and the British method of egg counting. And though America eventually gave Britain the boot, the British method of counting eggs has remained in use ever since. Nothing's quite as terrible as opening a bag of delicious cheddar and sour cream potato chips, only to find the bag half empty, like you just got ripped off by Danny Ocean. That emptiness isn't there by accident, though. You see, before you even open the bag, that emptiness isn't empty at all. It's made up of air. More specifically, it's made up entirely of nitrogen. This nitrogen is meant to provide a cushion for the chips so that they don't get pulverized into tiny bits. The nitrogen also helps to preserve the taste and keep the chips from going prematurely stale. In the industry, this nitrogen is referred to as slack fill. Slack fill makes up about 43% of the average bag of chips, meaning almost half of every unopened bag is a crushing disappointment waiting to happen. Like waiting in line to meet Batman at the mall, only to discover he isn't the real Batman.
That's more like it.
Among the biggest offenders with the highest air-to-chip ratios are Cheetos and Ruffles. Some bags of Cheetos have been found to be as much as 59% nitrogen, which makes sense. Chester Cheetah doesn't look like he's never done whippets. On the other end, Fritos and Tostitos have some of the lowest air-to-chip ratios, along with Pringles. In fairness, Pringles has a whole tube of armor to protect its chips from pre-party crushing. If you've ever made yourself an old-fashioned, or if you've ever taken a shot of bitters, you may have come across a little bottle with a big label. The brand? Angostura. The label? Comically large. To the uninitiated, the Angostura label looks like a mistake. It's huge and awkward, like the bottle is wearing its brother's hand-me-downs. And to be frank, it was a mistake made nearly 150 years ago. In the 1870s, the Seigert brothers, heirs to the Angostura business, decided to give their family bitters company a makeover. One decided to design an all-new bottle. The other decided to design an all-new label. The problem was, neither brother thought to consult the other about the new design's dimensions. So what they ended up with was a tiny bottle with a huge label. It was a real gift of the Magi situation. Although at least at the end of this story, they still had a bottle of bitters. The brothers thought it was funny and decided to keep the bungled redesign to increase brand recognition. This little bottle of bitters has worn its XXL label proudly ever since. So what do you think? Which of these packaging origin stories surprised you the most? What do you think about these food packages? Let us know in the comments below, and while you're at it, check out some of these other Weird History Food videos.